My name is Andrea Jensen, and I was 32 years old when my sister chose my anniversary party to announce she was pregnant with my husband's baby. She did it in front of 40 people, beneath a chandelier, while I was standing beside a cake decorated with the words, "Happy Anniversary, Andrea." She expected me to collapse. I could see it in the way my husband's hand hovered near my back, ready to catch me if I fainted or control me if I screamed. I could see it in my sister's lifted chin, in my mother's satisfied little breath, in the frozen smiles around the room. "I know this is shocking," my sister said, placing both hands over her stomach like she had just won a crown. "But we are in love, and this baby deserves honesty." My husband lowered his eyes, pretending shame, but I knew that performance. I had lived with it for years. The room waited for me to break. Instead, I picked up my champagne glass. "Then let's drink to honesty," I said. Nobody moved. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a folded medical report I had carried all evening. "Since we're telling truths tonight, I should share one too. Last month, my husband took a fertility test." His face changed before I even finished the sentence. My sister's smile cracked. I raised the paper higher. "The result says he has a 0 sperm count." The whole room went frozen. Then I looked at her stomach and said, "So now I think everyone wants to know who the real father is." Before I tell you what he said next, and what happened after I walked out of that anniversary party, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story travels, because somewhere out there, someone is sitting silently beside people who think betrayal will destroy them. Maybe this story is exactly what they need tonight. 6 weeks before that anniversary party, I still believed I was the problem. That was the cruelest part of everything. For 3 years, I had swallowed vitamins, changed my diet, tracked cycles, cried in bathrooms, smiled at baby showers, and apologized to my husband for a failure that had never belonged to me. He never screamed at me directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he used softness like a weapon. "Maybe we're just stressed," he would say, touching my hand across the dinner table. "Maybe you're putting too much pressure on yourself." And because I wanted a family so badly, I believed him. I turned my suspicion inward. I made my own body the enemy. Looking back, that was the first crime he committed against me. Not the affair, not the lies. The first crime was convincing me to hate myself so I would never question him. The first piece of evidence arrived by accident. I was working late in the home office when our shared tablet lit up with an email notification. I almost ignored it. Then I saw my sister's name. The subject line was blank, but the preview read, "We need to be more careful. A is getting suspicious. Not Andrea. Not your wife. Not my sister. Just A. One letter. An obstacle. A problem to be managed." I sat there for almost 10 minutes, staring at those words while the house hummed quietly around me. My husband was downstairs making tea, acting like the gentle man everyone admired. My sister had been at our house the previous weekend, laughing in my kitchen, borrowing my earrings, hugging me too tightly when she left. Suddenly, every small thing sharpened into focus. The perfume on his shirt, her late-night messages, their private jokes, the way my mother always defended her before I even accused her of anything. I did not confront him that night. That is important. The old Andrea would have rushed downstairs with tears in her eyes, begging for an explanation. The old Andrea wanted answers immediately because she still believed love could be rescued by honesty. But the woman staring at that email understood something colder. Liars do not confess because you ask nicely. They confess when the walls close in and every exit disappears. So I took a screenshot, forwarded it to a private email account, deleted the notification, and walked downstairs like nothing had happened. He handed me tea. I thanked him. He asked why my hands were cold. I told him the office window had been open. He believed me because men like him never suspect quiet women are collecting evidence. The next morning, I called my best friend, Angela. I did not cry until I was in her car with the doors locked and the radio turned up to cover the sound. I showed her the screenshot. Her expression changed slowly from confusion to anger to something like fear. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I said, "First, I'm going to find out whether I was ever the problem." That afternoon, I drove to the fertility clinic where my husband had supposedly been handling all our appointments. The receptionist recognized me, but her smile tightened when I asked for complete copies of both our records. "Your husband usually manages the paperwork," she said. I smiled back. "That's exactly why I need it." 15 minutes later, I sat in my car with a folder on my lap and my entire marriage splitting open in my hands. My results were normal. Not perfect, not impossible, not hopeless. Normal. His file was almost empty. No complete male fertility test. No final report. No proof that he had ever gone through the testing he claimed had been inconclusive. That was the moment grief turned into strategy. I did not want revenge yet. Not fully. I wanted truth. I wanted the ground beneath my feet to stop moving. I wanted to know whether I had spent 3 years mourning a lie. So I made a new appointment under the excuse of a couple's consultation. I told my husband the doctor needed updated samples from both of us before changing treatment plans. He complained, delayed, joked, and tried to charm his way out of it. I watched him do all of that with a calm face and a recording app running in my purse. When he finally went, I waited 3 days for the result. Azoospermia, 0 sperm count. The doctor was careful with his words. I was not. "So he cannot be the father of a child naturally?" I asked. The doctor looked at me for a long second and said, "Based on this result, natural conception would be considered medically impossible." I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt rage so clean it almost steadied me. Because this meant my sister's recent behavior, refusing wine, touching her stomach, whispering with my mother, was not just suspicious. It was a trap. She was either lying about being pregnant, or she was pregnant by someone else and planning to use my husband's guilt to take my life apart in public. A week later, I saw her leaving another clinic with a man I recognized from old college photos, Ricky Bowen, her ex-boyfriend. He touched her lower back with the casual ownership of someone who did not think he was a secret. I photographed them from across the street. Then I followed the evidence, not the emotion. Coffee shop receipts, clinic dates, social media posts hidden badly, not deleted. A comment from Ricky under an old picture. "Best night of my life." My sister had not just betrayed me. She had built a lie inside another lie and planned to place it on my anniversary table like a gift. That night, Angela sat across from me at her kitchen island while I spread the documents between us. Emails, fertility results, photographs, screenshots, bank transfers from my husband to my sister, and one anniversary invitation printed on ivory paper. Angela touched the invitation and whispered, "You're going to let them announce it?" I nodded. "They want an audience," I said, "so I'll give them one." She looked at me like she barely recognized me. Maybe I barely recognized myself. But for the first time in years, I was not begging to be chosen. I was choosing the battlefield. The anniversary party was my idea, which made my husband suspicious for exactly 1 day. After that, his ego swallowed the warning. He thought I was trying to save the marriage. He thought the elegant invitations, the private dining room, the photographer, the champagne tower, and the guest list full of family friends meant I was desperate to display a perfect life. My sister thought the same thing. My mother helped her believe it. I knew because I had another email thread by then. One my husband forgot to delete from a synced laptop. My sister had written, "Are you sure she won't make a scene?" My husband replied, "She'll be too shocked. Her mother will calm her down." That sentence stayed with me. Her mother. Not your mother. Not Linda. Her mother. As if I belonged to a handler. As if my grief could be managed by the woman who had spent my whole life asking me to be smaller so my sister could shine. I planned the party like a legal case. Every seat had a purpose. My husband sat to my right, close enough for everyone to watch his reaction. My sister sat opposite me, where the photographer could capture her face. My mother sat beside her, the loyal guard dog of the golden child. Angela sat near the back with a small recording device hidden inside her purse and instructions to capture everything after the announcement. Mary, my cousin, sat near the center. She was loud, social, impossible to control, and addicted to live streaming family events. People underestimated Mary because she talked too much. I invited her because she talked too much. Some truths need a witness. Some truths need 40. When my sister stood up, the room softened around her. That is what beautiful liars count on. She wore a pale blue dress, loose enough to suggest innocence, fitted enough to guide every eye to her stomach. My mother clasped her hands together like she was watching a miracle. My husband went still beside me. I felt his knee shift away from mine under the table. My sister tapped her glass with a knife. "I know tonight is supposed to be about Andrea and her marriage," she began. Even then, she said my marriage like it was already dead. But life is complicated, and sometimes love happens where you least expect it. A few people laughed nervously. I watched my husband stare at the tablecloth. She continued, voice trembling perfectly. "I'm pregnant." The room burst into gasps, then silence. She let the silence stretch. She wanted the knife to go in slowly. Then she said, "And the baby's father is Andrea's husband." For 1 second, I was not strategic. For 1 second, the old wound opened. Not because I was surprised, but because hearing betrayal spoken aloud makes it real in a way evidence never can. My lungs tightened. My fingers pressed around the stem of my glass. I thought of 3 years of negative tests. I thought of my sister hugging me while carrying her lie. I thought of my mother knowing. Then I looked at my husband's face and saw not remorse, but calculation. He was waiting to see whether I would become the unstable wife. That saved me. Rage can burn you alive, but clarity is colder. I lifted my glass. "To honesty," I said. My voice carried farther than I expected. The murmuring stopped. My sister blinked, confused by the absence of tears. My husband whispered, "Andrea, don't." That was the first honest thing he had said all evening. I unfolded the fertility report and placed it beside my plate. Since we're celebrating life-changing announcements, I have one too. Last month, my husband completed a fertility test. My mother's chair scraped. "This is not appropriate," she snapped. I looked at her. Neither is helping one daughter steal the other daughter's marriage, but here we are. Someone gasped. My sister's face tightened. My husband reached for the paper. I moved it away. "The result was a zoospermia," I said. "0 sperm count. Medically, he cannot be the biological father of a naturally conceived child." The sentence landed like glass breaking. My sister whispered, "That's impossible." My husband said nothing. That silence convicted him faster than any document could. I took out the second report. Different clinic. Same result. Then I turned the page toward the room, not for drama, but for proof. Both tests are dated within the last month, so either science changed tonight, or my sister has made a very serious mistake about who fathered her baby. My mother stood. Her face was white beneath her makeup. "Andrea, stop humiliating your sister." I almost laughed. even then. Even with the evidence in my hand. Even with my marriage bleeding out in front of everyone. Her first instinct was to protect the person holding the knife. No, I said. Tonight, I'm done protecting people from the consequences of their own choices. My husband finally spoke, low and angry. You had me tested behind my back? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man furious not because he had been betrayed, but because he had been caught. You let me believe I was broken for 3 years, I said. You watched me apologize for a child you knew you could never give me. Do not talk to me about betrayal. Then I picked up my clutch. My sister started crying, but her tears had no direction. She looked at him, then at my mother, then at the guests who were no longer looking at her with sympathy. The story she had rehearsed was dying in real time. I stepped away from the table. My husband grabbed my wrist. We need to talk privately. I pulled free. Private is where lies survive. Then I leaned close enough for only him and my sister to hear. This was file 0. I have 6 more. As I walked toward the door, Mary's phone was already raised. Comments were appearing. Whispers were spreading. My sister called after me. Andrea, wait. I can explain. I stopped at the doorway and turned back. Save it for the real father, I said. I already found him. I did not go home first. That surprised my husband. He expected me to run to our bedroom, throw clothes into a suitcase, collapse onto the floor, maybe answer his calls when panic softened his voice. Instead, I drove to Angela's apartment, parked in the underground garage, and sat in the dark, while my phone vibrated itself almost dead. 32 missed calls in 20 minutes, texts from my husband. You misunderstood. We need to control this. Don't ruin your own life. Texts from my sister. Please don't tell Ricky. You don't understand. Mom says you're acting insane. That name on my screen confirmed what I already knew. Ricky was real. Ricky mattered. Ricky was the weak seam in the lie. Angela opened her door before I knocked. She had wine on the counter, a blanket on the couch, and the expression of someone ready to hold me together if I shattered. I did not shatter. I placed my phone on her kitchen island and watched another call appear from my mother. Answer it on speaker, Angela said. So I did. My mother did not ask if I was safe. She did not ask if I was hurt. She said, "What you did tonight was unforgivable." I stared at the phone, almost fascinated by the shape of her loyalty. What I did? I asked. Your sister is pregnant and terrified, and you publicly attacked her. I said, my sister announced she was carrying my husband's baby at my anniversary party. My mother exhaled sharply, because she wanted honesty. That was when I understood the final betrayal had not happened tonight. It had been happening for weeks, maybe months, inside conversations where I was discussed like a problem to be solved. Did you know? I asked. Silence. Not long, but long enough. My mother said, Rose needed support. There it was. Not an apology, not shock, a defense. I ended the call without another word. Angela looked at me. You need to meet Ricky before they get to him. I nodded. My sister and my husband would try to rewrite the story by morning. They would say I was unstable, jealous, infertile, cruel. They would use every old wound they had helped create. So I wrote Ricky a message with no emotion, only facts. My name is Andrea Jensen. My sister is pregnant. She announced tonight that my husband is the father. I have medical proof that he cannot be. If you have been involved with her, you need to speak with me before lawyers do. He replied in 9 minutes. We met the next morning at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Ricky looked younger in person. Or maybe fear makes grown men look unfinished. He stood when I arrived, knocked his knee against the table, and nearly spilled his coffee. She told me she was single, he said before I sat down. I believed him more than I expected to. Not because he was innocent, but because his panic was too messy to be rehearsed. My sister's lies were always polished. His were not. I showed him the photos. The clinic, the cafe, his hand at her waist, the date stamps. Then I told him about the announcement. He pressed both hands over his face. She said she was going to tell her family soon. She said the father wasn't in the picture. I slid a consent form across the table. Then put yourself in the picture legally. He stared at the paper. A paternity test? Yes. Before the baby is born? There are legal ways to establish responsibility and prepare for confirmation. My attorney will explain the process. Right now, I need your written consent and your statement that she misled you. He looked toward the window, jaw tight. I don't want to hurt her. I almost admired that. Almost. She used you, I said. She used my husband. She used me. And if you stay quiet, she will use the child too. His hand trembled when he signed. Then he told me something I had not known. My sister had asked him for money twice, claiming medical expenses and saying her family would abandon her if they knew. He showed me transfers, thousands of dollars, different dates, different excuses. One note read, "For our future." By noon, my attorney, Ryland, had Ricky's statement, my husband's fertility reports, and the first layer of financial records. By 3, we found another layer. My husband had been moving money from a business account into personal accounts connected to my sister. Not huge amounts at first. Small enough to hide. Then larger transfers disguised as consulting payments. I had thought the affair was the whole rot. It was only the smell. Underneath was fraud, arrogance, and a man so certain I would never look that he stopped covering his tracks. That evening, I went home with Angela and a police escort arranged by Ryland. My husband was in the kitchen, still in the shirt he had worn to the party, his hair disordered, his charm gone. He looked at the officer, then at me. "Seriously?" he said. "You brought police to your own house?" I walked past him to the bedroom. "No," I said. "I brought witnesses." He followed me to the doorway while I packed the suitcase I had prepared 2 weeks earlier. "Andrea, you're making this bigger than it needs to be." I folded a sweater. "You announced a pregnancy with my sister at my anniversary party." She panicked. She performed. His voice hardened. "You think you're untouchable because you found one test?" I turned then. "No. I know I'm untouchable because I found everything else." For the first time, fear crossed his face. Not guilt. Fear. That difference mattered. Guilt would have meant he still had a conscience. Fear meant he understood consequences. I zipped the suitcase and walked past him. He did not grab me this time. The officer was watching. At the front door, he said, "You'll regret destroying this family." I looked back at the house where I had spent years shrinking myself to fit inside his lies. "No," I said. "I regret not starting sooner." 3 days later, my mother requested a family brunch. Her exact words were, "We need to handle this privately before outsiders destroy us." I saved the message because it was almost funny. Outsiders had not destroyed us. Insiders had. But I accepted because privacy was exactly what they did not deserve. I chose the country club where my mother had built her entire social identity. She had hosted charity luncheons there, smiled through gossip there, introduced my sister as my beautiful Rose there, and once told a table of women that I was career-driven, but not naturally maternal. I wanted the truth to sit in the same room where her lies had been served with lemon water and polite applause. I arrived last. My sister was already seated, wearing soft beige and wounded eyes. My mother sat beside her like a defense attorney. My husband sat across from them, jaw tight, phone face down, looking less like a lover and more like a man trapped between 2 collapsing investments. Angela came as my support. Mary came because my mother had forgotten not to invite the family's loudest witness. A few relatives were there too, summoned under the promise of reconciliation. Nobody knew I had paid for the room's presentation system in advance. Nobody knew the manager had agreed to connect my laptop after dessert. My mother began. Andrea, this family has suffered enough humiliation. I placed my napkin in my lap. I agree. She looked relieved for half a second. Then you'll apologize? No, I said. I'll clarify. My sister started crying immediately, but this time, the tears looked tired. I made a mistake, she whispered, but you're trying to ruin my baby's life. I looked at her stomach. No, I'm trying to prevent that child from being born into a lie. My husband leaned forward. Enough. We all know the fertility results are private medical information. You had no right. You're right, I said. Medical truth is serious, so is financial fraud. His mouth closed. I stood and picked up the remote. The screen behind me came alive, not with one dramatic slide, but with a folder labeled Evidence File 4. The first document was the fertility report. The second was the independent confirmation. The third was Ricky's signed statement. The fourth showed transfers from Ricky to my sister. The fifth showed transfers from my husband to my sister. I did not click quickly. I did not repeat myself. I let each document sit long enough for the room to understand it. Silence can be more violent than shouting when every person in it is reading proof. My sister stood. You had no right to contact Ricky. Her voice shook, but anger held it upright. You brought my husband into this, I said. You brought Ricky into this. You brought a child into this. Rights became complicated the moment you turned people into props. Mary whispered something under her breath and lifted her phone. My mother noticed too late. Mary, put that away. Mary did not. People should hear both sides, she said. Isn't that what you always say at brunch? Then I opened the final file. A short video. My husband's office camera had captured him and my sister weeks earlier. They did not kiss in the clip. They did something worse. They planned. My sister's voice came through the speakers, low and anxious. If she breaks down, Mom can take her home. My husband replied, once everyone knows, she won't fight. She cares too much about looking dignified. I paused the video there. The room did not breathe. Even my mother looked at my sister then, not with protection, but with alarm. Planning cruelty is harder to excuse than impulsive betrayal. My husband pushed back his chair. That recording is illegal. Ryland had prepared me for this. It came from a company device in a company office during an internal financial review, I said. Your legal team can discuss that with mine. His face went gray. What internal review? I changed the slide again. Bank transfers, altered invoices, payments disguised as vendor expenses. My husband stared at them like they were written in another language. Your company has already received copies, I said. Their legal department contacted me this morning. They requested my cooperation as a material witness. My mother whispered, Andrea, what have you done? I looked at her. I stopped being useful to liars. The collapse was not theatrical at first. It was quiet. My husband sat down slowly. My sister turned toward him, searching for rescue, but he would not look at her. That was the moment she understood she had not stolen a devoted man. She had inherited a coward. Then Mary's live stream comments began appearing on her screen, and my sister saw strangers saying Ricky's name, asking about paternity, calling out the fraud. Her face changed from fear to humiliation. That was when the screaming started. Turn it off, she cried. You're ruining me. I said, no, I'm showing the version of you that you kept hidden. My mother stood so quickly her chair tipped. You are cruel, she said. The word might have hurt me once. That day, it sounded like a confession. Cruel would have been letting her child grow up inside a lie, I said. Cruel would have been letting him continue stealing from his company. Cruel would have been staying silent so you could keep pretending your favorite daughter was innocent. Her lips trembled. I was trying to protect my family. No, I said. You were protecting your favorite story. Before I left, I placed 3 envelopes on the table. One for my husband, divorce papers, one for my sister. Notice from Ricky's attorney, one for my mother. Documentation showing that the house she lived in had been partially funded through money now under investigation. She opened hers first. Her hands shook so badly the pages rattled. My house, she whispered, may become evidence, I said. You should speak to a lawyer. My sister sank into her chair. My husband stared at the divorce papers like they were a death sentence. I gathered my bag. You wanted an audience for my collapse, I said. You got one for yours. The week after the brunch was not peaceful. Exposure was only the beginning. My husband's company suspended him within 48 hours, froze his access, and opened a formal investigation into the financial records I had handed over. The man who once told me I was too emotional during fertility treatments left me voicemail after voicemail, each one weaker than the last. First, he apologized. Then he blamed my sister. Then he blamed stress. Finally, near midnight, his voice dropped into something ugly. You should have stayed quiet. I saved that message too. Ryland, my lawyer, filed for divorce, asset protection, and a restraining order after my husband appeared outside Angela's building, drunk and shouting my name. That same day, Ricky's attorney began the legal process to establish paternity and protect his rights. My sister tried to fight the truth the only way she knew how, online. She posted a tearful video claiming I was jealous, unstable, and trying to destroy her happiness. It stayed up for less than an hour before Mary posted the brunch clip, the one where my sister and my husband discussed how I would break. After that, the comments changed. Sponsors disappeared. Friends stopped defending her. The woman who had built her life around being admired suddenly learned how fast admiration turns into judgment. My mother came to my apartment 2 days later. She did not ask how I was. She said, "Rose hasn't eaten." I stood by the door and stared at her. Even after everything, her first instinct was still to protect the daughter holding the knife. She pushed past me into the living room and begged me to stop before the damage became permanent. I placed a folder on the coffee table. Inside were messages between her and my sister, transfer records, and a forged loan taken in my name 3 months earlier. $50,000. The money had moved through a joint account and ended up covering my sister's expenses. My mother's face collapsed when she saw it. Rose was desperate, she whispered. That was the moment the final thread broke inside me. So was I said, for 3 years. But my pain was never urgent to you. That night, my husband broke the restraining order. He showed up at my building, drunk, furious, and convinced he could still scare me into silence. Security called the police before he reached the elevator. I watched through the lobby camera as officers put him in handcuffs. By morning, his arrest was local news, and his company had moved from internal review to criminal referral. Fraud, embezzlement, forged documents, misuse of company funds. Suddenly, the affair was not even the worst thing he had done. It was only the mistake that made me start looking. A month later, Ryland called me into his office. He wants a plea deal, he said. The evidence is overwhelming. My sister was facing Ricky's custody case and a civil claim. My mother's house was being pulled into the financial investigation because some payments connected to my husband had helped cover her debts and renovations. Their beautiful little world was not exploding anymore. It was sinking, slowly and publicly, under the weight of every lie they had stacked beneath it. Do you want to pursue everything? Ryland asked. I looked at the evidence files spread across his desk. For years, they had counted on my silence, my shame, my need to be loved. I was done paying for their comfort with my own destruction. Everything, I said. All of it. That evening, Angela brought takeout to my temporary apartment. We ate on the floor because I still had not bought a dining table. Do you feel better? She asked. I thought about the question. Not better, I said. Free. And free feels strange at first. Later, when my phone lit up with another unknown number, I let it ring until it stopped. For the first time in years, silence did not feel lonely. It felt like mine. 6 months after the anniversary party, my divorce was finalized. My husband was sentenced. My sister's custody battle had begun, and my mother's house was gone. He received 8 years after pleading guilty to financial crimes and forged documents tied to my name. People asked if 8 years felt like enough. I never knew how to answer. No sentence could return the nights I cried over a body that was never broken. But prison did one thing clearly. It made his charm useless. My sister gave birth in early spring. Ricky called once to tell me the baby was healthy and that he was pursuing primary custody. I did not celebrate that. A baby is not a trophy in a revenge story. A baby deserves truth from the beginning. My sister later left one voicemail from a blocked number. Are you happy now? She asked. I listened once, then deleted it. Happiness had nothing to do with her anymore. My mother tried to reach me through relatives. First, she wanted forgiveness, then money, then one honest conversation. I sent one message through my lawyer. I wish you accountability, healing, and distance from me. Do not contact me again unless it is through counsel. It sounded cold, but it was clean. Sometimes peace begins with a locked door. When the settlement arrived, the number on the screen felt unreal. 7 figures, quiet, heavy, final. I donated a large portion to a fertility trauma support organization for women who had been manipulated or shamed during marriage. In the note, I wrote, "For every woman told she was broken by someone hiding the truth." 2 weeks later, I moved into my new apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a small balcony, bookshelves I chose myself, no shared passwords, no hidden emails, no ghosts in the walls. Angela brought wine, Mary brought a plant. We sat on the floor eating takeout, and for once, no part of me waited for betrayal to walk through the door. Before Mary left, she handed me an envelope from my husband's sister. Inside were old photos from my marriage, holidays, anniversaries, smiling faces that no longer felt real. At the bottom was one picture of me as a little girl, sitting on a porch, grinning at the camera with fearless eyes. I pinned that photo to my bedroom mirror. Every morning I saw her before I saw myself, before my sister turned love into competition, before my mother made approval impossible, before my husband turned my dream of a family into a weapon. There I was, not broken, not second choice, not cold. Just delayed. 1 year after the party, I passed the restaurant where it happened. Through the window, I saw another celebration being prepared. Clean glasses, white tablecloths, a cake waiting near the wall. For a moment, I remembered my sister under the chandelier, my husband lowering his eyes, my mother whispering that I should not make a scene. Then I remembered my own hand lifting the champagne glass. To honesty. So no, I did not collapse. I did not beg. I did not fight for a husband who had already made himself worthless. I raised a toast, opened the first file, and let every hidden thing walk into the room wearing its real name. My husband lost his freedom. My sister lost her stage. My mother lost the story that protected her. And me? I lost the illusion that their love was something I needed to earn. That was the real revenge. Not the scandal. Not the money. not even watching them fall. The real revenge was waking up in a home they had never touched, looking at a childhood photo of myself, and finally understanding the truth. I had not been destroyed. I had only been delayed. And now, finally, I was free.
We hope this fictional story gave you a meaningful ending. It was created only for entertainment, storytelling, and educational purposes. We hope it reminds you that your peace is not something you should keep sacrificing just to keep others comfortable. A relationship that only works when you stay quiet about your pain is not truly safe for your heart.